Hello, this is Danny Ryan, and welcome to the Three Wheel Podcast. Today, I have Tommy Ryan here with me this morning. Hello, Tommy.
Hey, Danny.
And I'm excited to have him here. We're going to talk a little bit about something that we've covered on, we have something within Three Wheel called the Morning Brew. And every week we get together, and Tommy started this up where we talk about some of the new features within Office 365, and it's a really neat place for people to ask questions, for you to sort of share something maybe that you picked up that week. And we're going to talk this morning about a topic that we've been talking about recently, which has to do with social. It has to do with Yammer. So tell me, let's just get this kicked off. Tell me a little bit more about what we want to talk about this morning.
Well, the topic that seems to be a revolving topic is the idea of social and all of the things that you have kind of at your fingertips for social. And when you start looking at that, there's that challenge of which one do I pick and for what reasons. And so we've kind of noodled on that, talked about kind of pros and cons and what things come into that decision of choosing the right social pieces of the platform.
Awesome. So everybody's used to sort of the default fallback, and it's not really social, but the default fallback sort of email for communicating to people. So that seems to be, if I don't know what to do, I always sort of, that's my, I sort of resort back to email. We have Yammer, which we use pretty extensively inside of Three Wheel, and that seems to be sort of the place that is sort of the water cooler place for all of us to go and share, and maybe something you've picked up recently, and that seems to be the place where we get probably the most social activity inside of Three Wheel.
Right. Yeah, social is, in the past, maybe 5 years back, became a very hot buzzword, and there were social products that were kind of a point solution just for social. Yammer being one of those that it has kind of a micro-blogging type of feel to it. It's something that surfaces a personal aspect, people's faces, and things like liking, so the things that you experience in these social products that are out in the consumer world like Facebook. And so Yammer tends to be one of those that comes to mind a lot from organizations to say, it's easy, I kind of get it, not a lot of training to use it, and you can get up and running right away. And Yammer's done a lot towards making as little friction as possible to get people going and using the product.
Yep. And I think for folks who might not be aware of this, Yammer was a company that Microsoft acquired a couple years back, and they had it was one of the original products that I know we were using as we were getting into social. We also did some stuff with Jive Software, which has a very social product as well, and has got some experiences with working with that. And then we're sort of back to what Microsoft has to offer. I think I remember seeing the other day Gartner put out one of their Magic Quadrants, and it was a surprise. It was Microsoft was in the upper, right-hand corner as far as social, which was interesting to see. Talk me through a little bit about the process of, you have something you want to share with the group, and sort of the decision-making process that goes around taking something of where do I put it. And we were talking about this the other morning, which was the concept of channels and the concept of deciding what channel to pick based upon what groups I wanted to hit, or what was the appropriate channel. Just talk me through sort of at a high level what sort of decision making goes through your head as you're deciding how to share.
What's interesting when you use that term social, it's almost a rebranding of collaboration. And so, and started to define some of the things that you do from a collaboration standpoint. And Yammer's one of those that became one of the standards for that new generation of what's called social. But I think there are many tools that are social in nature. From Skype for Business to email, to other features that you're seeing getting a lot of attention, like Office 365 groups. And when you think about being social, you're really trying to work with the collective knowledge of the organization. And depending on the scope of how many people you want to reach out to and join that conversation will determine, I think, the tool. So if you look at something like Yammer, Yammer has a capability of external networks. So if that social conversation needs to span beyond your organization, that's a tool that's going to allow you to go and bring other people into that conversation. If you're looking at Office 365 groups, that's going to be something probably more towards the internal social or collaboration, and it lights up all the features in Office 365 with the kind of container of a group, almost like the security groups or distribution groups you would have in Active Directory and Exchange. Office 365 groups are a way to put context around a calendar, conversations, files, and consume the services of Office 365 as a group. And so I don't have to necessarily respond to every conversation that happens in my group, but it's out there for me, and it gets a little bit of my awareness. So I think the challenge is how far do you want to amplify or put that message out, because it can be distracting. So you want to pick the right tool and the right quote container of people to make sure you're getting the most effective collaboration within your organization. And I think the lowest level you get down to email, email kind of one-on-one, or if it needs to be more urgent, a Skype one-on-one that can eventually grow into something larger. You can add more people in the conversation, but typically Yammer is not a one-on-one, even though there is messaging there. I think people tend to use something like Skype or their corporate IM versus using the Yammer direct message.
I think through the years, one of the things that's been interesting for us is to see how transient this social information is, and how quickly it loses its value almost. So, like I know we've helped a lot of customers out with migrations. Done a lot of. We worked with Jive for a while and have actually had a lot of customers want to move from Jive over. That Microsoft has really put out some good social features, wanting to move over to Microsoft. And one of the things that I think is interesting is to see when people end up taking a look at what the content that it is on social. It's almost like they just wanted archive. It's not. It meant something at one time, but then over time it really loses its value, and it doesn't. You just have these sort of ad hoc conversations that are needed at the time, but then you really don't need them later on.
Yeah. I mean, you hear it as termed water cooler conversations.
Yeah.
With organizations. Being geographically dispersed. I heard you talking to Lane the other day, and he's out in North Carolina. You thought he was in Columbus, but he's in North Carolina.
So you heard that. I didn't start. I didn't say, "Okay, Lane, let's stop this."
There
podcast.
is someone that listens to your podcast, Danny. I'm a big fan, and I really appreciate you doing this. It's kind of a side note. It's really neat to hear the stories of people at Threewill, and it adds a nice little touch.
Great, thank you.
But
I keep my job.
But we're talking about the kind of the lifetime of information in your traditional social channel software like a Yammer is its value. It almost diminishes in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
So when I go into Yammer, I'm usually in there enough that what hasn't been read in previous conversations is within a couple hours. I'll check it maybe 2-3 times a day because I like it. I think it adds to the culture of your organization. But those conversations, they're very timely, and you want to have basically reach into the knowledge of your organization, no matter where people are. You don't have to be physically next to the person.
Yeah.
So you put it in Yammer, and all of a sudden I've got a problem, and other people can help me if they have that skill and knowledge. Traditionally you hear people say, I'm going to manage my skills, I'm going to tag all these people in their profile for their skills, then I'm going to have this nice little tool that can go look up people and find people based on skills. I think that's good, and I think that there's a place for that, and organizations put time into that. We help organizations do that, but some amazing bang for the buck is if you put it out in something like Yammer, you're going to get help from people. The people that have that skill, that really are good at it, will want to jump into that conversation and help. So that's the nice thing about that. But that information is not knowledge as much as connectivity and awareness to your organization. So when you go to migrate, you go say, okay, I've got all this stuff in Chatter or Jod or Yammer, and I want to move it from this network from this tool over to this tool.
Yeah.
A lot of times we tell organizations, why? Do you really want to do that? What is that really knowledge, or is that just conversations that had some value at the time, but you're never going to be able to make it discoverable at a later date, without too much effort, and really does it have value?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that you just brought up is sort of a differentiator for us, and could be for other professional services organizations, which is why would you want to work with a company versus an independent consultant? And our rates are higher than the independent consultant, and should be, because of things like when someone's out on a project, they have the whole team to help them out with particular things that they might be running into. So it's more of, you're not just hiring one person from ThreeWill, you're hiring the team from ThreeWill. And social gives us that, because we can, that person's running into an issue. One of the things that we do really well here is if they do post it up onto Yammer and people jump in, it's almost like they gang up on the problem together. And so all of a sudden that person becomes magnified, and that we're able to do things that we're not able to do as individuals.
Right. I that's a really good point. And I think, we've got Grant out at a large client of ours, and we're always concerned about doing anything that looks like staff aug. And we've got this service called Sustainment, which is a pool of people that will take things off of the queue and kind of help work things as kind of a third level kind of tier support desk.
Yeah.
And we can have some teaming, because it's a team of people doing that. But then when someone goes out there as kind of a lone ranger to be almost staff on a team, and they're not surrounded by a ThreeWill team, we get really concerned with that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, do they feel like they're a part of ThreeWill or part of this other company? And having something like Yammer, where Grant, I see him a lot of times reaching out into Yammer, and he gets that help. So it keeps that connection to Grant, and makes him feel like he's part of the team as he's in this stint. And we're working very hard to get Grant on actually teams early next year, get him on some really cool projects. And also on the reverse side of that, like you said, the client gets more value, because it's not just Grant, it's Grant with ThreeWill behind him. So that's I think a powerful thing of having a tool like Yammer. You would use email before.
Yeah, you would. Or like I remember back at like Extreme Logic, they started those distribution lists too, right?
Yes.
Just mass distribution. People ask questions on that, and you get people firing back on that. What was that? You
saw the look in my head, and it was Dev. Oh gosh, what was Ted Patterson's group? Well, it was a discussion board, essentially.
I remember, and it had a name to it, but
it had a name. I can't remember. So, someone on our podcast listeners are probably knowing what it is right now, and they can let us know.
Well, bringing
I'll
that
talk to myself later today when I find out, and I'll let you know.
Leave a comment. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this and just sort of sharing more about social. And I'm excited because just to give folks a heads up to the one or two listeners that we have, or you'll be listening to this later on, I am trying to coerce or take Tommy's arm, bend it behind his back, and try to get us to do a podcast together next year. we want to focus in on Office 365. And so this is one of the things right now. I'm working on a couple of podcasts, the Three Will podcast being one. I'll continue to do these. These are really fun. It's just a nice way for people to share what's going on in projects. But next year, we're going to be doing a weekly podcast, and we're going to be focusing in on Office 365 and having a nice little format as far as what we're doing every single week. So that's going to be coming after the new year. I want to wrap up some stuff on, I'm also doing a Salesforce App Exchange podcast. I want to get some of that wrapped up, basically cover all of the different categories, get the videos and all that stuff buttoned up, and then I want to go after this Office 365 podcast and have conversations just like we're having this morning.
Yeah.
And just sit around and get people, this is going to be your way of listening for 10 to 15 minutes each week to find out what's going on in the world in Office 365. So that'll be coming after the new year. I'll definitely be promoting that. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, just threewill.com/newsletter, and you'll be in the know as far as what's going on with Office 365. So look forward to that next year.
You won't twist my arm too hard.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I think that would be a great idea.
I think it's going to be, I think it should be a lot of fun. It'll be, there's a lot of different things we could focus in on, and I think Office 365 has really become important to a lot of folks, and we want to keep people in the know, and it'd be fun to do that next year. So let's give it a run for a year.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Let's do it. Thank you so much thanks for joining me this morning.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.